When a modern hunter steps into dense timber, they do so with the confidence of an apex predator. Draped in high-tech camouflage and carrying a rifle capable of dropping a bull elk at 400 yards, they move with the assumption that they are the most dangerous thing in the woods. This feeling of security is built on a specific expectation that every interaction within the environment will follow the known rules of the wild. If something moves, it is an animal. If it's an animal, the hunter has the tools to control the outcome. This is the zone of control. A hunter occupies the center of a secure, predictable radius. But watch how easily this perimeter is pierced when unidentified, erratic variables enter the space, variables that do not respond to a weapon. In the following 3 accounts, a bow hunter in the Pennsylvania thickets, 2 hunters on a Texas lease, 3 men at a mountain camp. Every individual arrived with the proper gear, sufficient weaponry, and years of experience. They were prepared for every scenario they had been taught to expect. Yet these stories demonstrate a recurring failure of that preparation. When a threat operates outside the behavior of local wildlife, the presence of a firearm can actually delay a hunter's survival response, as the brain struggles to reconcile its perceived safety with an impossible reality. The shift from hunter to prey begins with territorial displacement. This is the moment a subject realizes they are no longer the primary occupant of the land they are standing on. For the Pennsylvania bow hunter, this realization began with a single set of tracks in a light dusting of snow. He discovered a cheap, weathered ladder stand that hadn't existed the week before. Leading to its base was a one-way trail of human footprints, emerging from the deep woods and stopping at the stand with no signs of departure. In the Texas encounter, the displacement was visual. While scanning a clearing for deer, the grandson spotted a figure peeking from behind a trunk at the edge of the woods. It wasn't a fellow hunter passing through. It was a silent observer, watching the blind from the shadows. A hunter enters the wilderness to track, but here the roles were already reversed. Finding out that your own movements have been monitored from the moment you arrived instantly strips away the illusion of isolation. When you realize a shared space is actually a contested one, the brain is forced to abandon offensive hunting tactics. The focus shifts entirely from pursuing a target to managing a perimeter that has already been breached. The second phase of the reversal is the direct subversion of the hunter's tools. The threat begins to treat the hunter's equipment not as a danger, but as a curiosity to be manipulated. In Pennsylvania, the hunter returned to find his backpack moved and unzipped. His knife, flashlight, and arrows were laid out in the snow in a neat geometric line, like a deliberate inventory of his lethality. Nearby, a dead squirrel hung from a wire, suspended over a circle drawn in the snow, a clear, symbolic claim of the area. The Texas hunters experienced a different kind of subversion. After hanging their fresh kill to clean later, they returned from a supply run to find the carcass covered in violent, unnatural claw and bite marks. Their prize had been reclaimed and defiled in their absence. When these hunters attempted to use their AR-15s to re-establish dominance that night, they were met with an unearthly scream and heavy bipedal footsteps. The rifles provided no tactical advantage against an adversary that refused to show itself, and the men were forced into a panicked retreat to their cabin. High-powered weaponry is a tool for a specific type of conflict. It loses its psychological and physical utility when the adversary operates entirely outside the known behaviors of humans or animals. The final phase of the reversal is perhaps the most effective, the weaponization of human psychology. This is where the threat uses the subject's own morality to render them helpless. This occurred during the mountain camp trip. In the middle of the night, the 3 men heard that sounded like a woman screaming in agony miles from the nearest road. The sound didn't stay stationary. It slowly circled their camp, closing in through the pitch black. This is the empathy trap. The hunters are presented with 2 paths, both resulting in failure. Investigating the sound in the dark invites a potential ambush, while staying hidden means living with the possibility of having abandoned a person in need. This moral hesitation effectively locks the safety on every rifle in camp. Because the scream sounds human, the men cannot fire blindly into the dark to defend their perimeter, without risking the life of a potential victim. The trap reached its climax when the scream erupted from the center of the campsite. Despite being armed, the men were paralyzed. They abandoned their individual tents and huddled in a single group, unable to use their weapons against a threat they couldn't identify as either a victim or a predator. In the deep woods, the apex predator is defeated not by a superior physical force, but by the weight of their own human hesitation. All three groups eventually made it back to their vehicles and escaped the woods, but while they kept their lives, they left their sense of dominance behind. The Pennsylvania hunter's final memory of that property is the image in his rearview mirror, a man in a dirty hoodie standing at the edge of the clearing, slowly dragging a finger across his throat. It was a silent confirmation that the hunter had been allowed to leave. For the mountain campers, the trauma is internal. One of the men still wakes up in a cold sweat, haunted by the possibility that he heard a real person dying, and chose to hide in a tent with a rifle he was too afraid to use. These encounters redefine the deep wilderness. It is not a controlled space for recreation, but a vast, indifferent void where human laws and status have no standing. Crossing the threshold into total isolation strips away the protection of modern society. It proves that once you leave the trail, you exist entirely at the mercy of whatever owns the dark.